Hi, my name's Nick Caruso, and this is a presentation of using NSi AutoStore to support enterprise faxing needs. This presentation is not focused on the benefits of a fax server or server-based faxing. This is mainly focused on the user experience using the NSi solution. In this demonstration, I'm going to be using two actors, Tom Ridge, who's going to be submitting an expense report, and Leslie Hunt, who will be receiving that fax. It's important to note that everything I'm going to be showing you today, when the person receives the fax, it'll be just like if they were receiving any other fax from a normal fax workflow, except in this case, Tom Ridge is going to be using the NSi solutions to provide a secure and rich user experience. So when Tom needs to submit an expense report to Leslie, he may have lots of different types of content. In his daily operations, he may have paper-based content that he needs to fax. He may have content maybe that he's receiving on his mobile device. And he may have electronic content that he needs to fax. Traditionally, in the electronic content, he would be printing it out, walking over to his fax machine, and then faxing it out. With the NSi experience and the NSi technologies, we can greatly benefit that workflow. So we're going to be showing a multifunction device for capturing paper documents, a mobile device to capture content on the go, and a web client to capture those electronic documents. So let's get started with using a multifunction device, and that's what the majority of this presentation is focused on. So on the MFD menu, he's going to have the NSi AutoStore screen, and from there he can have a button called Fax Destinations. Now that button can be completely changed by the customer, the logo, the icon, the text, and so forth, but in this case I'm just having a button called Fax Destinations. When he clicks on that, he'll be prompted to enter in a fax number. He can type in that fax number on the hard numeric keypad on the device. And then he can go ahead and press the Start button. It will then scan the document and submit it to the fax server. The fax server will then submit that content to the final destination. We have several integrations with fax servers to include WriteFax, Stream, BizCom, and several other fax systems, and additionally we've been able to integrate, to my experience, every single fax server that's on the market one way or another. When Tom sends that fax to Leslie, he will get a email notification saying that the fax was successfully submitted. So this email notification is not just the fax got to the fax server, but that the fax server also successfully sent out that document to its final destination. This email actually comes from the fax server. We obviously need to know who the person was at the MFD when they faxed out that document in order to send them a customized email notification. This presentation assumes that Tom Ridge authenticated at the multifunction device using either a PIN code, username and password, or more commonly these days, a badge swipe card system. Now, Tom can also, when he goes to the MFD, we can add a new button on the MFD called History and Status. And when Tom can press on that button, he can see detailed information regarding the faxes that he has sent out and the status of those faxes in the workflow. If Tom did not authenticate on the device, this can just be a list of history and status of any faxes sent from that multifunction device. But when we're talking about faxes, there's a lot of security holes associated with that. It's very disconcerting to think that anybody could walk up to any device and fax to anywhere in the world. And so how are we securing that workflow? When we talk about data loss prevention, or DLP, there's three areas to focus on. Data in motion, and what we can do with that is we can have a fully SSL encrypted connection from the point of capture, in this case the multifunction device, to the fax server. We'll also have a full audit trail of who faxed the document, where they faxed it, and who they faxed it to. We can also keep an archive of that content. We can also interrogate the content within that document. So for example, if the document contains a social security number or patentable information or other confidential information, we can prevent that document from ever even leaving the organization. Data at rest. Again, we're going to be encrypting the content. If there's any temporary files as part of that workflow, all those files will be fully encrypted using both AutoStore encryption technologies as well as local server encryption technologies such as BitLocker. And finally, data in use, and I think this is the most important one that's most often neglected. The number one way that there's a breach in security in an organization is through human error. And the most common way in a fax workflow is somebody entering in a wrong fax number. So we're addressing that through fax validation, where we're going to validate the number that the person entered in. We can allow the user to look up addresses in a phone book. We can allow the user to pre-select from their most common fax destinations, and we can also provide them a full fax history. So this is how we're going to support that mitigating human error. So in the previous screen, when a person typed in that fax number, if they typed in the wrong number, we can automatically validate. So we can check to make sure a number must meet a certain profile. In this case, the user accidentally typed in an extra 7 for the area code. Well, a 7 is the area code for Russia. So potentially this fax could have gone to a foreign destination. This is actually a real-world scenario. The NSi technologies were purchased by a legal customer specifically because they inadvertently had sent faxes to Japan, to the wrong destination in Japan, and they wanted to make sure that only pre-approved fax numbers in a large database of fax numbers were allowed to be sent out. Additionally, you could maybe be one digit off again, and if that number is not in a valid database, we'll flag it. Now, this is completely optional, but just to show you how the NSi technologies can provide value in a faxing workflow. Additionally, we can allow the user to pre-select from their most recent destinations or their most frequent destinations. We can have the user search their address book, either a public or personal address book. And they can also include a cover sheet. So let's go into a little bit more detail on each of these three. Most frequent fax destinations, this is just like your history and status. In this case, though, you can select from one of these original fax destinations, and it will automatically pre-populate the destination based upon that selection. You can also search an address book. This can either be your own personal address book or the company's public address book. And then you can add a fax cover sheet, and you can type in a person's name, a contact information, and notes, and then that will be appended dynamically to the front of your fax so that when it gets to the final destination, the recipients will know who to send it to. And lastly, if you're faxing in expense reports, in this case our scenario was Tom Ridge, and the organization knows that this is a common workflow, why don't we just put a shortcut button on the panel of the device to automate that process to really mitigate the chance of a human error. So we just covered faxing paper documents. Let's now talk about mobile documents. So oftentimes, commonly in the workforce today, you're on the road and you might receive a document attachment via email, or you might be taking a picture of something. And how can you do that using a mobile device? Well, with the NSi technologies, the exact same workflows that were on your multifunction device are also exposed on your mobile device. So you can do the exact same things. You can type in a fax number, you can look up your most recent faxes, and those most recent faxes are not specific to just a specific multifunction device. It's specific to you as the individual. So no matter where you are, no matter what multifunction device you're in front of, or on your mobile device, you're going to have that common user experience. So the exact same workflow, the faxes are captured on the mobile device, they're sent to the AutoStore server, who integrates with a fax server, and then it's sent to the final destination. And then lastly, we're going to go over a web client. You may have an electronic document that you've received, an attachment, and you need to send that. We certainly don't want you to print that, so what you can do is you can use the NSi web client that will send that document through the exact same workflow. So it's a very common user experience no matter if you're using a multifunction device, a mobile device, or a web client. We found organizations that have found this very, very compelling because in the past they were installing a thick client on everybody's desktops, and that was a security concern as well as a IT logistics nightmare to do. Also, many organizations were faxing through an internal email workflow, but email is not HIPAA compliant, which means that it's not compliant towards healthcare regulations, and there's many other regulations out there that prohibit sending confidential documents via email, even if it's just an email workflow internal to your network. So this web client is a very popular approach with enterprise customers. And again, the same workflow. It's going to be capturing from the web device, routing through the AutoStore server to the fax server, and then finally to the final destination. So in summary, I just showed you how we can capture content from paper documents on the go on mobile devices as well as electronic document upload, all using the NSi technology for an integrated user experience. Thank you.